Today on Stretch Your Kitchen, get ready to start your day right. I'm going to share ways to ensure that breakfast remains the most important and easy meal of the day as you work to stretch those grocery dollars, minimize food waste, and serve up delicious breakfast for you and your family. Great meals don't start in the grocery store. They start in your own kitchen. I'm Erica, and I'm on a mission to prove that thoughtful cooking isn't about buying more, but about using better. Welcome to Stretch Your Kitchen. One of the greatest memories I have from my childhood is it was a summer road trip that I took with my family. My dad rented an RV, and he decided to drive from Pennsylvania all the way down to Florida, stopping along the way at various campgrounds. They were mostly KOA campgrounds at that time, but we stopped at multiple campgrounds along the way. It was me, my mom, my dad, and all four of us siblings. So we had an RV, but we also had a tent that was kept inside the RV while we were driving. My mom and my dad and my brother all slept in the RV, and my sisters and I slept in a really large tent that we set up at each campground, and we loved it. We used to sneak out at night to hang out with our friends in the campground and then return under the cover of darkness. We slept in each day only to wake up and head to the RV as if the night had been so restful and relaxing. My parents were none the wiser. As soon as we approached the doors of the RV, the smell of delicious hazelnut coffee brewing inside overtook our senses. Each morning as we entered the camper for breakfast, it was like a mini vacation in and of itself. There was delicious food prepared by my mom and wonderful smells, and of course, the amazing company of family. Those summer mornings, complete with breakfast in the great outdoors, really made an impact on me. And to this day, I love breakfast foods and the ritual of gathering around the table on a weekend morning for what I came to call big breakfast. And whenever I smell hazelnut coffee, I am transported to a time 40 years ago in a campground in Florida, complete with family, fun, and amazing camper-made food. Well, here is a reality for most people. When we reach adulthood, life gets hectic. It's busy and it's often stressful. Sometimes we feel like we're racing against the clock, and it's difficult to slow down and maybe take in the smells of a cozy breakfast prepared at home. And we can't always enjoy breakfast at the table, lingering over hazelnut coffee and conversation. But here is a stretch your kitchen truth. Whether you're at the table or running out of the door or on the bus or on the train or in your car, you can still enjoy breakfast, the most important meal of the day, while stretching your grocery dollars, minimizing food waste, and serving up delicious, flavorful food, even if it's on the go. So that leads me to today's Kitchen Quest. The Kitchen Quest is where I tackle new topics each week to help you stretch your grocery dollars, minimize food waste, and turn what you already have on hand into delicious, flavorful meals. Today, we're talking about one of the easiest, and I kind of feel like the most overlooked opportunity to stretch your grocery dollars, and that's breakfast. Here is a fact that I'd like you to ponder. Breakfast can either quietly drain your budget, or it can quietly multiply your food. It can be rushed and repetitive and expensive, or it can be strategic and delicious and creative and deeply satisfying. Today, it is my sincere hope that you walk away from this episode feeling encouraged that you can first make breakfast feel abundant without overspending. Second, use leftovers intentionally in breakfast. Third, create your own weekday grab-and-go options. Fourth, elevate weekend breakfasts without extra grocery trips.
And finally, reduce food waste while you're at it. This is about building a breakfast system, not about buying more food. So let's get started. Breakfast is not a separate grocery category. It is a continuation of the inventory that you have on hand. If you start thinking about breakfast as a place to use leftovers, or a place to repurpose pantry staples, or a place to transform almost done ingredients, and a way to set the stage for a really satisfying day ahead, you will transform your view of breakfast from merely a necessity within the confines of a busy morning to a way to stretch your grocery dollars and still provide delicious food, even if it's in a hurry. What I want to emphasize today is 4 important ideas that are central to rethinking how we prepare breakfast each day. First, breakfast is a forgiving meal. Second, breakfast is flexible. Third, breakfast doesn't require perfection. And the fourth, and really where the stretch your kitchen mindset is encapsulated, is that breakfast ingredients are some of the lowest cost, highest yield foods in your kitchen. Think about it. Eggs, oats, potatoes, rice, yogurt, bread, tortillas. These are budget stretchers. Breakfast doesn't have to be elaborate, but it should always be strategic, part of your overall plan to nourish your family while stretching your kitchen. I like to think of breakfast options in categories. There are different types of breakfasts that we might prepare or have on hand for our families. The first are sit-down breakfasts. I call them big breakfasts in my house. Think lazy Saturday or Sunday mornings. These often turn into brunches, depending on how many hours you choose to enjoy the comfort of your own bed. And hey, you've worked hard all week. You deserve some rest and relaxation. So first we have sit-down breakfasts. Next, we have what I call minimal prep breakfasts. These breakfasts might take 5 to 10, maybe 15 minutes tops to put together, but they are doable with a few minutes of extra time and a little bit of prior planning. The third is the grab-and-go breakfasts. These are strategic breakfast options that take very little prep time, but still reap big, nutritious rewards. And the fourth category is what I call the convenience at a cost breakfasts. These are what we want to avoid if we're trying to stretch our kitchen. The goal is to first know your family rhythm and ensure that you are utilizing your kitchen inventory to its greatest potential in order to start your day right with the most important and quite possibly the easiest meal of the day. So let's dive first into the grab-and-go breakfasts. These are kind of the make-ahead and possibly freeze breakfasts because let's talk real life here. Weekday breakfasts need to be fast, maybe repeatable. You can use it again and again, and definitely flexible. When we talk about these make-ahead and freeze breakfasts, it really is a freezer breakfast strategy that has to come into play. Instead of frozen breakfast sandwiches from the store, maybe you make your own, like a wrap with egg and cheese or egg and leftover meat from dinner the day before or a few days before that you've then wrapped up and frozen, or even an egg and veggie wrap. These are easy because you can make them ahead, freeze them individually, and then you've just prevented drive-thru spending or wasted tortillas that you forgot about in the back of your cupboard or refrigerator, or forgotten leftovers. Here's that stretch your kitchen rule. If it freezes, it stretches. So some ideas of these make-ahead breakfasts, these grab-and-go breakfasts, as I'm going to call them, are breakfast burritos and tacos. I've talked about breakfast burritos before, and there is a recipe on stretchyourkitchen.com. Well, you simply fill a tortilla with, say, scrambled eggs and cheese, and either cooked sausage, bacon, or potatoes, and you individually wrap them. First, I wrap them in parchment paper, and then in addition to that, I then wrap again in, say, plastic wrap. You can freeze these for 1 to 2 months. It's a great make-ahead option that literally requires 1 to 2 minutes in the microwave. It's grab and go. Then there's quiche. You can make a large quiche and portion it out into individual slices and then freeze them in the same way you would freeze breakfast burritos. That is a very nutritious option for a weekday grab and go breakfast. There are also things like egg muffins or breakfast sandwiches that resemble something that you might get in a fast food line, only for a fraction of the cost. But what about oatmeal? If you're an oatmeal fan, you don't have to make it fresh every morning. You can do baked oatmeal cups. You simply mix oats, eggs, milk, and fruit, and then bake them in muffin tins. These are great for on the go, and they freeze perfectly. Another great idea is pancakes and waffles. You can make a large batch and then let them cool and then freeze them with parchment papers between the layers to prevent them sticking together. And they also can be reheated in the microwave or even in the toaster. Of course, you can make a banana bread or an oat bread or breakfast cookies, which are a really healthy grab-and-go option, packed with oats and maybe bananas and other nutritious ingredients. Something my kids always liked when they were younger is French toast sticks. You can make your own French toast sticks. Cut thick bread into strips, dip in an egg mixture, of course, cook them as you would regular French toast, and then freeze them. You could either freeze them with parchment paper wrapped around individual sticks, or what I like to do is freeze them on a large baking sheet, laid out so they are not touching, and once they're frozen, gather them together in a Ziploc baggie and put them in the freezer. If you're from Hawaii, another breakfast that's super easy and grab and go and lasts for, say, 4 to 5 days in the refrigerator are musubis. If you're not familiar with what a musubi is, it's basically rice, Spam, and nori, and it's wrapped up into a compact grab-and-go nutritious breakfast / lunch / dinner / snack. We eat them all the time here in Hawaii. If you're somebody that really leans toward that healthy breakfast option, you can just opt for fresh fruit, washed and ready to go in advance. That's grab and go. Or just simple hard-boiled eggs. They last for a week in the refrigerator. I think it's important to note that not every grab-and-go item needs to be a freezer item, but many are because it is fast and it preserves food longer. So if you do choose to freeze, I do think it's important that I give you some tips for success on freezing items. First, make sure you cool them completely before you freeze them. It's very important because it will prevent condensation from being sealed into whatever wrapping you're choosing, and that will minimize sogginess when you reheat. Also, wrap individually. For items like burritos and breakfast sandwiches, wrap them individually in foil or plastic wrap for easy grabbing. I prefer plastic wrap and parchment paper because I can easily remove the plastic wrap outer layer and then microwave directly in the parchment paper. When reheating, most items can be microwaved directly from frozen, often in 60 to 90 seconds or maybe 2 minutes tops, or they can sometimes be reheated in a toaster oven. Also, when you're freezing items that might begin sticking together, flash freeze them first. I mentioned this. I lay them out on a baking sheet and place them in the freezer for about an hour before removing them and placing them into a storage bag. This prevents the items from sticking together. If you follow these tips for success in freezing, you will create a grab-and-go breakfast inventory in your own kitchen freezer that makes morning breakfast on the go easily attainable for you and your family. So let's move on to the second category, which I call minimal prep breakfasts. These are sort of the batch and remix method breakfasts. In other words, you can make one large batch and then remix them in different ways all week. So like maybe I make a batch of hard-boiled eggs or a batch of roasted potatoes or a large pot of cooked oatmeal or a bunch of breakfast sausage. And then all week long, I can remix those items into different meals. For example, maybe Monday I'll have eggs and toast. Maybe Tuesday I'll have eggs and a potato hash. Maybe Wednesday I'll make a fresh breakfast wrap. Maybe Thursday I'll make egg salad on toast. There's one batch of ingredients, but 4 different variations. Some other examples of minimal prep breakfasts include smoothie packs. Maybe I cut and portion fruits and greens and yogurt into freezer bags. And then all you have to do is grab a bag of frozen items and blend it with a liquid in the morning. Maybe orange juice, maybe a little milk. That is a great way to get a healthy breakfast with minimal prep. Another minimal prep breakfast that I really like is lox and bagels. I love like smoked salmon and bagels or lox and bagels. I just toast the bagel in the morning, spread it with cream cheese, and take out some lox, add it there, maybe add some chopped chives or fresh dill. It is one of my favorite breakfast foods, and it does require minimal prep. Another option, scrambled eggs or over easy eggs and toast. Eggs are so fast and easy to make, and they're super nutritious. What about avocado toast? That's easy and requires minimal prep in the morning. Or a quick scramble bowl, using maybe last night's rice as a base. Or a BLT that you can assemble in the morning. Or a fresh egg sandwich, using maybe cold sliced ham. Minimal prep breakfasts are still very achievable, but will take maybe 10 to 15 minutes in the morning. But that is a breakfast option that eliminates the need to go out to that fast food restaurant that maybe your kids are craving, but you know you can do better at home while stretching your grocery dollars. So let's move on to arguably my favorite, which is big breakfasts. These are weekend breakfasts. They can be elevated, but still strategic. Weekend breakfast doesn't have to mean new ingredients or spending a lot of money. It means transforming what you already have. For this type of breakfast, I kind of go by something that I call the almost gone rule. Before grocery day, I look at what is almost done, almost gone, what needs to be used up. Maybe it's a bell pepper or half an onion or 3 measly mushrooms or a handful of spinach. Well, that can be made easily into, you guessed it, a brunch frittata. Eggs, a little cheese, bake. It feels intentional, but it costs almost nothing. Another idea would be a leftover French toast casserole. You have some leftover bread on hand from maybe a ciabatta or a French bread or an Italian loaf. You just cube it, soak it, and bake it into a delicious casserole with cinnamon and eggs, just like a French toast, only in a large casserole fit to feed a family. You just saved that bread from going into the trash. By now, you know I love to use leftover mashed potatoes. You can turn those into potato pancakes. Mix it with an egg and some flour, and then pan fry. And because it's a savory pancake, you could top it with yogurt or a fried egg or even herbs. Now it's brunch. Leftover rice, which is something many people often have on hand, can become a sweet coconut breakfast bowl. You just warm that rice with milk and cinnamon and honey, and it gives it a very new identity. Weekend breakfast, or big breakfast as I call it, is about freedom and family. It's not about spending more, but using better. Breakfast is where small amounts of items can become full meals. Other big breakfast ideas include maybe biscuits and gravy using leftover gravy from last night's pork loin, or homemade cinnamon rolls. I've talked before about how inexpensive flour is, and baking from scratch is not something I used to love at all. As a matter of fact, I didn't like it at all. But now I realize how easy it can be. It is not intimidating, and it doesn't really take much time at all. And on the weekends, if you're planning a big breakfast, you might just have that time. Shrimp and grits is a favorite, or Benedict's. We've talked about my love for Benedict's. And maybe a hash brown casserole. There are so many options for big breakfast, but one key is to look at what you have on hand and figure a way to transform it into something delicious for breakfast. In that way, you minimize food waste while still providing a delicious big breakfast for your family. Now, that fourth category that I talked about at the beginning of this podcast, convenience at a cost, that is what we should strive to avoid. You cannot stretch your kitchen if you're buying breakfast out every week. And let's face it, the portion sizes are so large that oftentimes some or a lot of that breakfast on the go, that grab and go, that convenience at a cost, when it's not prepared at home, will probably end up in the trash. If you are serious about stretching your grocery dollars and minimizing food waste, I highly urge you to avoid those convenience at a cost breakfasts. If you prep once at home, you can have breakfast on the go and eliminate emergency spending, because emergency spending adds up fast. So I hope this gave you some great ideas for how to honor breakfast as the most important meal of the day while acknowledging that time is tight. You can create a delicious, flavorful breakfast for you and your family by following these 4 simple categories. You can do this. You can create breakfast for you and your family and have a nutritious grab and go option for those busy weekdays, or maybe a minimal prep option for when you have 15 extra minutes and you'd like something fresh, or those big breakfasts that create not only great food, but great memories. Let's work together to stretch your kitchen and keep breakfast as the most important and easy meal of the day. So now it's time for this week's culinary concern.
The weekly culinary concern allows me the opportunity to answer your questions and share more ways to help you stretch your kitchen. If you're feeling inspired, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. Visit stretchyourkitchen.com and please follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Stretch Your Kitchen for more tips, tools, and helpful takeaways to minimize waste and maximize flavor.
Let's talk about something real. You might be thinking, if I'm always using leftovers for breakfast, won't it begin to feel repetitive or like we're just constantly eating scraps? I get it. We associate breakfast with like a fresh start to the day, not yesterday's dinner. But here's the reframe. You're not eating leftovers. You're transforming your inventory. There's a psychological difference between a reheated dinner and a savory breakfast hash with caramelized onions and crispy potatoes. Same ingredients, different story. The key is we can change the texture of the food, or add eggs to the food, or add sauce, or add herbs, or rename it completely. We eat with expectation. When you intentionally reimagine food, it feels abundant, not recycled. Stretching your kitchen isn't about scarcity. It's not about not having. It's about creativity or about using. I'm going to add a document to stretchyourkitchen.com that highlights all of these 4 categories of breakfast options. And that might help you as you seek to figure out creative ways to use what you have on hand and create those grab and go breakfasts and those minimal prep breakfasts and even those big breakfasts for you and your family. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and truly it can become the easiest meal of the day as you work towards stretching your grocery dollars, minimizing food waste, and still serving delicious and nutritious food to you and your family. So let's move on to today's Triple T takeaway.
Each week, I'll leave you with my Triple T takeaway. That's tips, tools, or tasks to begin implementing the Stretch Your Kitchen lifestyle. These simple takeaways prove that thoughtful cooking isn't about buying more, but about using better.
Today, I want to leave you with a takeaway. It is a quick system for creating breakfast. Whether it's a grab-and-go breakfast, a minimal prep breakfast, or a big breakfast. The steps are as follows. First, choose a base. Second, add what's almost gone or almost done. Third, add a contrast. And then fourth, rename it. Let me give you an example. Step 1, choose a base. Maybe your breakfast base is eggs, or a grain, or bread, or a protein of sorts. The second step after choosing that base would be to add in what's almost gone. Do you have extra vegetables in your fridge that are needing to be used up before they go bad? Or small odds and ends of cheese, a bit of this, a bit of that? Or one last scoop of rice, or some leftover meat? Add that to your base. Third, always try to add contrast. Contrast is either texture or a bright, fresh flavor. Those contrasting additions really add so much to any meal, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. But today we're talking specifically about breakfast. So some contrast items might be a crunch to the breakfast. That could be nuts, or a leftover piece of French bread that you've turned into a crostini. Another way to add contrast is freshness, whether that's herbs or some bright citrus like lemon or lime. Another way to add contrast is sauce, like yogurt or hot sauce or honey. Once you've chosen your base, you've added what needs to be used or what's almost gone, and you've added contrast, the last step in this system is to rename it. That's right, just rename it. It now is a hash, or a bowl, or a bake, or a wrap, or a toast. Suddenly, breakfast is strategic. It is planned. An example might be a base of rice, an almost gone of some leftover broccoli. Some contrast might be a nice herb salad. And I'm going to rename it into a delicious veggie rice bowl with an herb salad, and I'll add an over-easy egg on top for that creamy, runny yolk that will create this delicious sauce. You see that? I now have created a breakfast bowl out of items that I already had on hand. So remember, breakfast is not just the first meal of the day. It is your first opportunity to stretch your kitchen. When you use what you have, when you purposely, intentionally repurpose items, or when you batch once and then remix, you reduce food waste and you reduce spending and you increase creativity in your kitchen. You can start your day knowing that you're running your kitchen, not the other way around. If you'd like, you can go to stretchyourkitchen.com and download these breakfast cheat sheets to help you get started. So until next time, keep stretching, keep cooking, and keep seeing possibility in what's already in your own kitchen inventory. That's all for this week's episode of Stretch Your Kitchen. Next week, I'm going to propose an alternative protein, that is. I'm going to dive into the world of alternative proteins so that you can see how easy it is to use these amazing sources of nutrition to stretch your grocery dollars, minimize food waste, and still serve up delicious food for you and your family.
Thank you for listening to Stretch Your Kitchen. If you enjoyed this episode or feel that it would be useful to someone else, please leave a review on Podchaser and follow me on Facebook or Instagram at Stretch Your Kitchen. And remember, thoughtful cooking isn't about buying more, but about using better.